Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. We're here again for the week ahead, where we take a look at what happened over the weekend and what you can look forward to on Lincoln Square this week. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square, and joining me is our wonderful executive producer, Sam Osterhout.
Hi, everyone.
And I guess we probably need to go back to Friday's summit in Alaska. I feel like we have to start there because we had great commentary from Stuart Stevens. If you missed it, we've got it right up on the homepage.
So good.
And I was also able to talk with Tim Mack, who's in Kyiv, about just the despondency people are feeling, watching that spectacle. But there are so many parts of this story. I know, Sam, you flagged that story that NPR had about Trump's crack State Department team leaving documents on a hotel printer with sensitive information about how everything was supposed to go down with the summit. I don't know. Hey, I'm just remembering back in 2016, like there was some issue with like emails.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like any other administration, this would be, you would think, oh, this is a bit of spycraft or statecraft, right? Like they're intentionally leaving something that they want to link or leak. But not in this administration. They just left it on the printer because they're idiots.
Right. But I mean, that this is kind of part and parcel for the Trump administration. That's why it doesn't really get attention because, I mean, this is a guy who left, national secrets in the bathroom of Mar-a-Lago, I mean, we're at this point, the bar is so low that, this is not really a major story.
Well, yeah. And I know we say this a lot, that we need to go, in any other time, this would be groundbreaking. And it saying that over and over makes it lose its impact, but it really shouldn't, because we actually don't want that to happen.
No.
We don't want these mistakes that are really unforced errors to happen at the top level of our government, especially when it comes to dealing with autocrats. And I think that's another, to sort of turn from that, it seems like, at least from the reporting that's being done, and I think you're more read up on this than I am, but it seems like the summit itself didn't come off as they planned, and something happened that we aren't really privy to yet.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? What's going on?
Well, before the summit, Trump promised that there would be a ceasefire. And then, in typical fashion, of course, he didn't take questions from the press. He just sat down with Sean Hannity from Fox News in his little safe space. But, afterwards, he was like, ceasefire? Who said anything about a ceasefire? Everything went great. Putin and I agreed on land swaps, and so it's up to Zelensky. He's going to make a deal. But clearly, between the obvious stagecraft with literally rolling out the red carpet for a war criminal, Putin, letting him ride in the presidential limo, where God knows how that's been compromised, security wise, is with a former KGB agent, just sitting there. And the image of him smirking. I mean, Putin knew what he was doing. He got everything out of this summit that he wanted. But I agree with you that it was worse than even we know, because there is no way that the leaders of Europe would rush to DC with Zelensky for this meeting today. I mean, they know that this is bad, and that Trump is just willing to sell out Ukraine completely.
Yeah, I think, some of the reports were that the, Caroline Leavitt and other officials looked, quote, ashen up at the podium as they came in and came out after the summit. It didn't go on as long as they thought it was going to be. There's no luncheon. Putin split, basically. And it does, the conspiracy theories, this administration does nothing but leave itself open to that sort of speculation, right? The sort of really damaging stories or conspiracy theories that would really bring down any other administration. And I think that, in my winners and losers today, I talk about Trump is my big loser. It's the first time he's made the list, but it's kind of like, he's like the de facto big chief loser of all time. But the reason I have him this week is because of, I talked specifically about the Kennedy Center, but the idea is that everything is a stage. So this is more theater, right? The papers and the printer, Putin rushing out, the canceled luncheon. It's really a soap opera, and I think when you think of it in terms of entertainment, it cheapens it, and also should make you feel much less safe.
Mm-hmm.
That this is spectacle and only spectacle.
Yeah. But I mean, that is one of the geniuses of Trump. That's why he has had such a lock on the Republican Party and on the American media for the last decade, because, he understands that a lot of people don't take what happens in Washington particularly seriously. They don't want to think about it. And that leaves the door open to the ultimate bad actor for Trump, who knows how to keep the media's attention, and keep people distracted by thinking this is all a bunch of silliness. But, really in the course of this summit, I mean, he sold out our foreign policy ideals for, the last century or so of freedom and democracy. I mean, he managed to just throw all of that away. And it's not just abroad. I mean, you've got the stark images of what's going on in Washington, D.C. My family's actually headed there pretty soon. Wow. And I'm really not looking forward to going to the Lincoln Memorial and seeing shock troops around. I mean, if there was some really good reporting from the Washington Post over the weekend that, allegedly Trump has dispatched the National Guard and troops around the city because Washington, D.C. is just overflowing with crime. Now, in reality, crime is lower than it has been in decades. And this is just a pretext for him to invade yet another city. He did this in Los Angeles just a couple months back, under the guise of, rounding up people for ICE. And we're going to see this playbook in every blue city. This is what he wants. He wants to send the message that he has control of the troops, that you are not safe anywhere in America. He is, this is a new sheriff is in town, but really this is autocracy. And, going back to that Washington Post story. So, the troops are not where crime is taking place. It's in the tourist traps, because this is all about authoritarian theater. Again, he wants to send this message. And, I mean, I just don't know a lot of people, no matter what your politics are, when you're going on a family vacation and, you're walking around the National Mall and, you feel like you're in Baghdad with the amount of troops. That's not really what we sign up for as Americans.
No. And I think, there's something to that. He's been saying for so many years that the cities are a wasteland of violence, and it's a terrifying place, and he's made it so. Right, all the violence we've seen has been caused directly by him, and it's weird. I think if we go back to that sort of spectacle of it all, he's always wanted to be a big commander, a big military guy, a big the commander in chief. He runs the military. He's the head honcho and all of this.
Right.
But there's no he threw out invading Greenland. He wants to invade Canada. He wants to do all of these, but you can't. You can't do that because there are people there who will shoot you, right? Like it is a bad idea from top to bottom to do any of that kind of stuff. But there's one place where he can deploy troops and get his theater
Hmm.
and face, minimal risk of troops being killed, and that's in his own American cities.
Right.
So in some, Washington D.C., I know the legality of the deployment in L.A. is sort of up in the air at the moment. There was a hearing last week, Monday, I think, through Wednesday.
That
Uh,
did not go well for Trump.
it didn't. Yeah. What was the outcome? I haven't read up on that outcome yet.
Yeah, I need to follow up. I don't believe that there's been a ruling, but
Mhm.
I know that the arguments, were not particularly persuasive. But of course, with the Capitol, with Washington D.C., there are some loopholes there. The whole
Yeah, exactly.
taxation without representation issue. And
Yeah.
so he's taken advantage of that. But I mean, when we get closer to the midterms and he invades Chicago and New York, he won't have that protection. He won't care.
No. Well, he does everything and then tries to unwind it later, or just count on it not being unwound at all.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and I don't know if you saw his tirade on Truth Social in the middle of the night, but now he's talking about getting rid of mail-in voting and voting machines. I mean, again, we've got to back up a little bit. The federal government does not run elections.
mhm.
Those run at the local level with your local
Yeah.
clerk. The state is much more involved, as the overseer. There's no
Yep.
federal system of elections. So, like, oh, is he pushing for Congress to take over the function of elections and completely overhaul them Soviet style? I mean, it's just bizarre. But again, it's this idea that he wants control over everything. And I can't help but remember that his biggest takeaway, when he was talking about Sean Hannity about the summit with Putin is, he told me that there was just so much cheating in the 2020 election with mail-in voting that I won. And I just thought that was a fascinating point. It's fascinating that a former KGB agent knows that this is the biggest thing that drives Trump crazy, that he actually
Yeah.
lost an election. And so, that's his takeaway in the summit that's supposed to be about bringing peace to Ukraine and Russia. I really did win that 2020 election because my buddy Putin told me.
Well, I mean, he's endlessly stokable and wonderfully pokeable, right? He can be uh, played to do anything, literally anything, because he only has one trigger. It's all Trump,
Hmm.
Trump, Trump, Trump. That's it. And so you can play on his insecurities. You can play on his insecurities. Really, that's it. That's all he's got is insecurity. But it also makes me wonder in that limo on Friday, what did Putin say to him?
Yeah,
What what did he say? Because Putin has him over a barrel.
right.
And it's the weirdest thing because Russia is not a strong country. It
No.
is depleted, its treasury and, human capital. It is just endlessly pushing its young men into the line of fire, and they're coming back in body bags in remarkable numbers. Um, in the beginning, Putin said that his invasion of Ukraine, he was like, well, Ukraine poses an existential threat to Russia, which was bullshit then. But as
Yeah.
soon as he invaded, you're like, oh, actually, they do. This is an existential threat now because you invaded them and
Mhm.
you're getting run over. And yet, Trump, the leader of the strongest, wealthiest nation the world has ever seen, is being played.
Yeah,
That's it.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's a horrifying
Yeah.
disappointment.
And, when we talk about the fact that it's unprecedented for Putin to be in a limo alone with the president, this isn't just like, oh, he's breaking decorum, oh, that's Trump. He's putting some gold leaf on the, Oval Office. Big deal. Um, this is a huge security risk. There's a reason why presidents in the past haven't done this.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, like as Tim Mack pointed out, Prime Minister Carney of Canada didn't get to ride in the beast.
Right.
And um,
Oh my God. When you
and
put it that way, I didn't think about that, but
yeah.
like,
So I mean, this whole image that Trump has, like, oh, he's not like other politicians, he's willing to
true.
say stuff that other people aren't and break, tradition. There's a good reason why we have some of these traditions, like not firing the, head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because they put out accurate information that makes you look bad.
Yeah. There's a documentary. It's it's called Hypernormalization, and it was put out. I think it was released right before the election 16, and it's available on YouTube. Maybe I'll link to it in the write up after the show. Um, but it's by Adam Curtis, a BBC journalist and documentarian. And my dog just came in, Roger. Hey, Roger, how you doing, buddy? He's my colleague today.
Nice.
But in any case, it's a remarkable work. It's very long and kind of hard to get through. Adam Curtis does these docs where it's all found footage, it's all archival with a sort of voice of God narrator, and it's super kinetic and confusing and all of these kinds of things. But basically talks about Putin's strategy to create a space in which truth and fiction have no bearing
Right.
in your mind. You
Right.
have no ability to tell fact from fiction to the point where you stop trying.
Yeah.
And when you stop trying to sort out the reality of your own existence, then they can say, Russia is the richest it's ever been. And
Right.
you're like, I don't, it doesn't matter if I believe it or it doesn't, or if I don't believe it. I have no input, no skin in this game. And so I will stop trying. But you guys should watch it. It felt really conspiratorial in the beginning, in 2016. And now it's like, oh man, not only is it,
Playbook.
not only does it read with Russia, but now it's like, oh, this is here for us now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really disheartening. I know there's a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat. And I know a lot of you out there are, feel that sort of angsty sort of hopelessness. But it's Monday morning. I think we need, it's another week. We get another shot at this. What else are we looking at this week, Susan?
Yeah, well, I know today you are going to be talking with Cameron Kasky over from the Bulwark, and he looks a lot at Gen Z and their politics. So,
Yeah.
What are you hoping to talk about with him?
I have like a huge list of things I want to talk about, from like AI and its potential impact not only on our economy and environment, but on our politics. I want to talk about just all kinds of things. I want to know, really where the Zoomers are in this moment. I know they don't speak as a total unified block. I'd love to talk about masculinity and how that's playing in the sort of manosphere. So many things, but I'll dial it in by one. I promise. we'll have a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Wednesday, I think, is a day that I hope everybody tunes in at 11 on the show that we're going to be launching. I basically have been talking with journalists at this time for a while. But I really like hearing from the people who are doing the reporting on the ground and
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
what's really happening. Nina Burley from Courier Newsroom, she's one of their national reporters. She's been breaking a lot of news on Epstein and Trump, and that's another story, that we could talk about. Like with any other president, this would definitely be something to bring them down. And it's like, this is the perfect scandal for the news media, and
Yeah.
I say that as somebody who's, been a journalist for so many years. I mean, it's a sex scandal. It involves, high, people at the highest, levels of society. You have Prince Andrew,
Right.
Prince of England, I mean, so many powerful people from both political parties doing the most horrible thing imaginable,
Yep.
trafficking children. And, the fact that there have been so few questions, from people in the White House press corps, for something that's been completely unresolved. Trump still has not released the Epstein files. We still, there's, we know that Ghislaine Maxwell is now in a minimum security prison after talking with Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche,
With
who's
apparently, and maybe chat, you can fact check me on
Mhm.
this. She has the ability to go on
To leave.
work release, yeah, on leave.
Right. And do yoga and all that fun stuff. Yeah. It's insane, and this is someone who, really survivors described as being even worse than Epstein. And for her to get this treatment is just so disgusting. So I will be talking with Nina about her reporting on the timeline of the Epstein scandal and news that she's broken. And then a little later on, we'll actually have one of the Epstein survivors, Jess Michaels, who has bravely talked about her experience. And we've talked about this before, but it really is the survivors who have been lost in any of the reporting, for the most
True.
part that we've seen. It's just all focused on, what's going to happen with Maxwell and will Trump get out of this one, which is just, such a ridiculously nihilistic view of things.
Yeah.
But like in this really should start with, for Maxwell to have been um moved, they should have talked to survivors. They didn't. And I feel like too few people who are talking about this story are really talking about the families and these women who were only girls at the time and were just so horribly exploited by people who were called monsters, and there really is no other word for it.
Yeah, I think this whole era is that, um, this, and I go back to the spectacle of it all, the stagecraft. Um, it's, this has been a will he, won't he, or will they, won't they, sort of TV setup the whole time. What's going to happen next? You're on the edge of your seats, but you forget that these aren't, people, fictional characters whose lives have been ruined. And I think, we talk about, we'll talk about this tomorrow night, I think, on strategy session as well. But that when the rubber hits the road and actual people's lives start becoming destroyed by Trump's economic policies, by his global weaknesses, by all of these things, then you start to identify as, you see the results of this. And I think if you're not paying attention to the victims of the Epstein scandal, then you'll forget that it ever happened. And I think that's a real loss of humanity for
Yeah.
us.
And
Really.
if you haven't already, you should read Ryan Wiggins' piece on this. She worked in the Florida Attorney General's office,
Right.
and has kind of an inside view into these horrible crimes and into the fact that really it's the victims that should be at the heart of this. So yeah, if you haven't already, we've got all of our archives on Lincoln Square for you.
Yeah.
And
Check that out.
same,
That's a good one.
yeah, it was a really, really wonderful piece. Sam, you mentioned strategy session, and why don't you talk a little bit? I know we're going to have a special guest this week.
Yeah, we have David K. Johnston, and he had, it's kind of amazing, just a little behind the scenes as producer and the executive editor. We, especially as Lincoln Square has been growing so rapidly, and we've been pretty aggressive in our content, our coverage. People are starting to reach out and talk, ask us if they can come on, but also just say, how impressed they are with our coverage. And I think Stuart's he's been doing these lives just direct to camera over the past few weeks, and the storytelling is so stunning, and they're so gripping that he forwarded me on an email he got from a really, really prominent politician. It was a beautiful email, but it's folks like that and David K. Johnston, who, by the way, has been covering Trump for 15 or 20 years.
Right.
And wrote a piece, I think in 2011, talking about what a disaster it would be if Trump was ever elected president. This is 5 years prior to this era. So that'll be a
Not only did we do it once, but we did it again.
We did it twice.
Yeah.
Ugh. As George W. Bush said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. Yeah.
That will live on forever if you listen to Jay-Z and Kanye West, which I don't know if you want to listen to Kanye anymore, but anyway.
Right.
But yeah, that will be a great discussion. And yeah, if you missed Stuart's live, you definitely should check it out. It's a pretty, I would say it's more of a somber take on things. But this was Friday as this summit was going on with Trump and Putin, and he says that August 15th, 2025 will be one of those days that we'll all remember. And I can't argue with that. I mean, to me, it really solidified so much of what we've talked about, the risk of having Trump in office and the willingness to sell out what the best of America is. And literally, because I mean, I think it's pretty notable that he had his commerce secretary there. Clearly he is looking to make financial deals in all of this. And he's been mentioning how Trump got some of the oceanfront property in Ukraine. And just like he's said the same thing with the travesty in Gaza, he's never seen an atrocity that he can't try and profit from in some way.
Yeah. Oh my God, Susan. It's
okay, it's Monday morning.
It's Monday morning.
It's Monday
another
morning.
Week.
Well, also, you know what? Why don't we end things on your winners and losers? Let's talk a little bit about the winner and why you decided that Gavin Newsom, deserved that honor.
Well, I think so. Yeah. So everyone, you got to read the piece. Let me know your thoughts. I know it. I'd asked I did a live last week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and asked for people's input on who I should choose, and one person absolutely nailed it, got it totally right. But I like to tie in the winner and the loser so that they're sort of foils, right? So that they are flip sides of a similar coin. And I think Gavin Newsom was this week and last week's winner because he understood what we've been talking about with the theatrics of this, right? That this is that Trump is creating spectacle across the board. Right. But the problem is with Trump's spectacle, it is an audience of himself alone. It is vacuous and empty of all meaning, right? It is just like a gilded tower or a gilded toilet, right? It is just a covering of sheen to it's a Potemkin village of all things democracy and whatever, right? And Newsom understands, I think, in a way that most politicians don't, that we are gripped by narrative and story, and we
Yeah.
want to take part, and we want to see what's going to happen next. But the difference between Newsom's trolling of Trump and Trump's just bullshit, Washington D.C. parades and troops in L.A. and Putin in Alaska and all of these things, is that Newsom is creating satire.
Mm-hmm.
And satire is rich with meaning.
Right.
Right? It means all
Dictatorships don't
things.
like satire.
No, no, you
They
don't
don't
like
like
satire.
mockery.
No. And this is the thing. I mentioned a poet in my piece, this guy William Stafford, who was born in my hometown and like grew up really loving his work. But he said, a poem means one thing and one thing more, and any good art does that. It is the representation, and then it is the subsequent meaning and other meanings that you can derive from it. Trump's theater means nothing. Just doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. But Newsom is creating satire and really quality satire that illuminates and really cuts through the absurdity of Trump and really shines a light on it. I think that is, whatever you feel about Newsom, I know he's oh, thanks, Blaine. I appreciate that. He's running, right? Like he's running for office. He's doing all the things. But in that particular case, chef's kiss.
Yeah. And I've yet to meet anyone like Gavin Newsom came and campaigned in Michigan, like,
Right.
most of the people who are hoping to run in 28, if things went bad. And I've really never met anyone. I've met people who love J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois. They love Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. They love AOC. I don't think I've met a Gavin Newsom head in the wild. I'm sure they must exist.
Yeah, right.
But it's just like, oh yeah, that guy, and look, let's face it.
That's a good point.
A lot of people think he's full of shit, but he's captured the moment, and he understands that this redistricting fight that Texas has started, that Trump started, he knows this is way more than winning a few seats in Texas. This is about putting the thumb on the scale for the 2026 election to save Trump's ass, because his poll numbers are terrible. And this is not just politics as usual. This is part of our march to autocracy, and the time to stand up is now. And that, he's got potentially more seats in California for Democrats to be a counterweight, and so he's got a plan. Now, you can say he's cringe. You can say, that he doesn't really mean anything he says, but right now he's connecting with people. And, I think the door is open for AOC can take up the fight in New York, because, the governor of New York says that she wants to do redistricting, but behind the scenes, it seems like she may not be quite as on board, because New York politics with Democrats is just a mess. It always has been. We can go into it later, because Sam knows, he lives there.
Yeah, true.
But why not be the force for let's get 5 more seats out of New York. Let's do this, and put that vision from more of the left, because clearly this is something that is appealing to people way beyond just Democrats. They're sick of watching cities being taken over like DC. They're sick of spending twice as much on school supplies when kids are going back to school this fall, because Trump's economy is not what they've been promised. And, meeting people where they're at, having some fun with those memes, that is a great way to fight fascism. It just is.
Yeah, it's also, his plan is pretty smart too. Actually, it acknowledges that gerrymandering is not the ideal system. It's not what we want. It proposes a temporary redistricting, right? That's only triggered if Texas does it.
Right.
It is, and there, I believe there's a mechanism to unwind it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to pass. I've heard like pundits, they're like, oh, who knows? No, it's going to pass.
Yeah, so that's, I think, the stories of this week really, the Putin, I'm wondering if stuff starts trickling out more about Putin, but I'm really going to keep an eye on that, the meeting today at the White House with Zelensky and the European leaders.
Yeah.
Um,
And we all will. And, it maybe we can look forward to another live from Stuart about what happened this week,
yeah,
because nobody breaks it down like him.
no, nobody. Then we've got DC. I'm really interested to see the new images out of DC. I know vacations are being canceled. Nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go to a war zone.
Yeah.
And then Epstein.
Yeah.
Epstein. Somebody had mentioned in the chat. The media needs to keep this front and center, and that's tune in Wednesday to Lincoln Square.
Yeah,
So
we
important.
definitely are. And our friends at the Lincoln Project are not letting go of this, because, we believe in accountability here at Lincoln Square. And, if the mainstream media decides that that's not their role, that they want to play nice with Trump, that's their decision. But we don't have corporate overlords. So, we know this is an important story, and we're going to keep talking about it. And, keep on telling us in the chat what you want to hear about, topics, people you'd love to see on Lincoln Square, because this is your community, and we rely on you so much for what we bring you every week.
Yeah, it's right. I love the comments. There's a woman in the chat I email back and forth with. You know who you are. Really appreciate you. And I love going into the chats and chatting it up. I have a couple of questions I'm going to pose in the chat this week, so keep an eye on that. And yeah, look forward to hearing from everyone out there.
Great. Well, thank you all for being with us as we go through the week on Monday, and we definitely will invite you to comment on this in our chat when we post this video. And Sam, hey, thanks so much. Your winners and losers. It was a great week. I feel like you've been waiting to do Trump. You picked the perfect week for it. And we'll look forward to seeing all of you later on. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you in a bit.